to another powerful episode of Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving deep into a conversation that blends science, soul, and everyday battles that men face with their mindset and the mental health. So, too often, society tells men to man up, suppress their struggles, and carry the weight of the world without breaking stride. But what if strength isn't about holding it all? It's all about rewiring the uh, way we think, we heal, and we thrive. So, to help us explore this, I'm joined by someone whose work is changing the way people, especially creatives, professionals, and young men, approach mental health. So, please welcome my guest, David McKee. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for that warm welcome. I appreciate it.
Amazing. So, David, like before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Um, Dear listeners, David is the founder of Another Angel Consulting, a global advisory firm that bridges psychology, neuroscience, and mindset coaching. So, he's helped renowned artists overcome creative blocks, young adults rebuild the confidence in a post pandemic world, and countless individuals unlock breakthroughs that reshape their lives. So he's also the author of Transformative Mindset book that makes positivity, gratitude, and neuroplasticity practical for everyone. So his journey is not only professional but also deeply, deeply personal, uh, shaped by his family's own mental health challenges. And today he's here to share not just the strategies, but the real stories, raw truths, and fresh perspectives on resilience, purpose, and redefining masculinity. So I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into the discussion. And David, welcome to the show. It's really, really nice to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Amazing. So David, um, as you have said, your passion for the mindset and psychology comes from the uh, personal experiences in your family. So,
Yeah,
uh, how did those challenges shape the way that you approach mental health today?
sure. So, I mean, so much we learn in life from our parents and our upbringing of how things, just how we're raised. And for me, it was a lot of, I saw my dad struggle, and we ended up finding out later in life that he was manic depressive, but he was deeply struggling with something mental. And it was obvious that he wasn't the normal person or the usual person I knew, my mom knew. And it was just sad to kind of see someone go from someone at their best to just someone who didn't know how to put anything together anymore. And he was deeply struggling with mental health. And he grew up in a household where that wasn't an excuse ever. It's like you couldn't not be feeling good or anything like that. That was just, you had to bury your thoughts, bury your emotions, and just fight through. And he kind of gave me that roadmap of I saw how he was raised with that. And I know that I was like, all right, that's something I don't want to pass down to my kids. And I've learned it for myself is I don't want to really be able to pass it on at all. I want to be able to talk about the issues that we're going through. When you feel something, say something to someone you trust or someone you can talk to and start the conversation. So many times when people make bad decisions, the worst decisions when we're sad, depressed, angry, if we can really just think of we're not alone in that moment and then reach out to someone to feel that we're not alone. Because usually the worst mistakes happen when we feel we're alone and we have no other choice.
Understood. Understood. So, uh, okay. And do you think that men in particular still struggle to acknowledge those early influences, like almost ever, I mean, um, as if admitting their roots make them appear weak?
Yeah, it's a tough. I don't think there's a blanket answer for any of it, but I know that there is still a stigma of it's better that people are getting the message out to talk more. It's part of why I do what I do, but there's still an issue where people don't want to really open up or go through, and a lot of it deals with that they had trauma in their past background, and they've got whether it's abandonment issues or fear of whatever, fear of shame, fear of whatever's going to happen. So there's a lot that's still kind of hung around that. And I still think people aren't really open to be fully authentic all the time. And it's what I teach with creatives. And now I'm working with CEOs and within businesses as well, that we can really make a difference in this realm just by talking about it, like getting out what are the problems that, and what's happening. We so much of society has turned, especially like Western society, of everyone. It's kind of like a everyone's replaceable type mindset, and if you can't do it, well, we'll get someone else who can. And yeah, I get that that works if you're running a business, but think about how that makes people feel, is that it feels like you're worthless or that you aren't anything or worth anything. So when you have that type of feeling, that's it's usually what I see is it's a combination of things. It starts with like you're in a situation like that with work and you can't really speak your mind at home. And I don't mean speaking your mind of saying all the negative stuff. I'm just saying being able to speak your feelings if you're feeling off or overwhelmed or anything along that line. And I mean, coming from someone that my dad stored all that and made
Yeah.
every bad decision possible to rip apart our family. I try to encourage people. I'm like, hey, if you talk about it, it's yeah, I get that it's a stigma and it can be tough and it might be a tough conversation to have. But the people you love will respect you a whole lot more if you include them in that conversation instead of you just acting alone individually and just making decisions that they're not a part of.
Mhm. No, I totally agree on this, definitely. So, uh, like, I mean, that's such an important reflection, also, I would say, because it reminds us that resilience often starts by confronting, not just avoiding or our backstory. So, um, definitely. And so, men are often taught to equate strength with the silence. Like, so from your work, what damage do you see that causing in men's mental health?
Sure. So yeah, it's being silent about stuff. It doesn't help anything. It's I come from someone who's I've done that. I did that for 28 to 30 plus years of always kind of just work through, grind through, make it like something else will happen. And the problem with that mentality is you get so laser focused that you're only really kind of looking at this really like short window of your life. And if you have a narrow focus, you're not seeing everything around you in the room. And to me, it equates to stress. Is that when that's how we are when we're stressed? Is when you're in flight or fright, you are tractor beams. You're just looking at like one straight vision. And when you're calm, you can see the entire room. So when you store stuff in there, store your feelings and aren't really talking about it, you're literally inhibiting your stress inside and keeping that inside. And that is making your focus
Yeah,
narrow, your thoughts narrow. Everything comes to then you're not really putting everything into yourself to become your best self or make your best decisions.
exactly. Mhm. And if silence is hurting us, what's the one practical way that men can begin shifting towards the healthier expression, like without feeling like they are, I mean, like, what do you say, like they are betraying that image of strength?
Yeah. So the great thing is with neuroplasticity, I'm glad you've mentioned that so much already. That it's
Mm,
a huge part of what I believe in, and on the neuroscience side, it's fact. It's just how the brain works. Is that you can rewire new connections in your brain, and it doesn't always have to be that same way. And the thing that a lot of people I think get stuck on is as they start doing that, it's change. Any type of change in your life. Think about if you're starting a new job or starting a new school or whatever the situation is the day or two before, the week before, you get a little bit of that anxiety. It's like that nervous excitement and all that. And
mm,
that's what change brings on is it's the fear of the unknown of that it's not all just scary, but some of it's exciting, but a lot of it is just because it's so unknown, it ends up being more on the scary side. So is being able to kind of work through that and just think of basics of if it's like say if that like the situation I just gave, if it is a first new job, I go back through 'em, how many other first new jobs have you had? And did it ever go to a fact where someone didn't help train you or didn't teach you what you were supposed to know? Usually, if someone's bringing you on, it's for a reason. And we tend to, with many as a society, we tend to psych ourselves out of a lot of stuff. And I mean, I'm a ADHD personality and I overthink. So, like, I can tell you, I always have these overthinking thoughts that are going wherever. And I was in this impression for the longest time that whatever you thought was real. And man, it's like I had a mentor give me the exercise, which really was super helpful of writing down every negative thought, every neutral to negative. If it wasn't happy, write it down for a day and ask. And literally was like, "Why are you feeling this? What do you think brought on this feeling?" And it was just like this kind of three questions you have to answer every time you had one of those type of emotions. And I thought, "Oh, this won't be bad. I'll be able to do it." But the crazy thing that came out of that, and like the wild, fascinating thing for me was as I wrote some of that stuff down, I'm like, "Oh man, I don't really believe that." And it was just in the moment I got caught up in whatever anxieties or whatever stress I was dealing with. And I kind of attached to that and just assumed because I was thinking it, it must have some sense of reality. And when I ended up learning that side of like, man, we sometimes just think about when you're really angry or like, or if something, if you're stewing or you're going through something, ruminating on the negative side, you tend to think of stuff that is really not realistic or like you just go to extremes, you go and stuff. It's like, nah, you don't really feel like that. It's just in that moment that's like you're heightened. So, what I really coach on people, and the best thing that you can do is we make our best decisions when we're calm. So, if you can get to yourself to a sense of calm, avoid the like, you don't always have to make a decision right in the heat of the moment. Sometimes it is taking a step back, sleeping on it, whatever mentality you want to do, take a deep breath, but really thinking about it and going into that whole, how are we going to approach it from here?
Exactly. Yeah. I love that because strength is not only just about shutting down emotions, but it's also about channeling it in a way that builds connection rather than isolation. So, the great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's and the fact of if you store it inside,
Yeah.
to me, it's we're avoiding it, and we're to an extent scared of that emotion. If we're storing it, truly, it's like we don't know how to handle that, and we don't know how to. And someone brought me the message of if you were looking at a leader, whether it's a president or a head of a nation or whatever, head of a country, whatever the situation, if you have a leader, do you want someone who is really not confident in themselves and is always kind of like going at other people, backbiting, whatever the case is? Or do you want someone who can acknowledge what's wrong with them and wants to fix it and make a solution out of whatever the problem is? And I think so many of us relate to that second. Oh, like, no, like let's do the common sense, like think rationally, make the right decision. And when we store stuff, we're not doing that. We're going down the road of bad decisions or thinking of a lot of bad thoughts that could lead to bad decisions.
Mm.
So when you can make that direct parallel of okay, this means bad and this means good or this means not bad, I always try to find those routes that aren't bad and good away from whatever you're thinking of in that moment when you're stressed.
That's amazing. Yeah. And like you have helped artists overcome creative blocks. So for men outside of the arts, how do
Yeah.
the creative struggles mirror the what do I say? Mirror the mental health challenges in everyday life, like at work, relationships, even in the fatherhood as well.
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot to me, it's I don't like to make it too cookie cutter because I do everything actually by client. So I'll make a plan per client. But yeah, when you get into I'm so sorry, I lost track of that. Can you restate the question real quick?
Sure, sure. And I mean, like, as I was mentioning, like, as you have helped the artists to overcome the creative blocks, but for the men who are outside of these arts, right?
Mm.
How do these same thing help and mirror the mental health challenges for their everyday life?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So the way I would relate it and why I've started doing with CEOs and businesses is helping them jump into thinking of a time when they were at their best or when they had success or find something. A lot of what I find, especially within musicians or on the artist side or even on the business side, is we can pinpoint out at least one point in their lives where they felt successful or felt they made an impact. So
Yeah.
what I try to do is we rework a whole I'm making it very simple in this terms, but this is what we do on a very granular level is we start walking through what were they doing day to day when they were successful like that? What were the basic habits? Our brain remembers stuff. Like if you remember a song from 20 years ago and it was like when you were in high school, for me, I'm aging myself. I'm in my 40s. So 20 years ago, I was in college. And like if you hear a certain song, it like brings me back to that feeling of when I was in college. And I think a lot of us have felt that within music of or like if you watch a movie or have a moment, if you watch that with someone and you see that movie again in the future, you remember that moment you had with that person. It's kind of like stored in you. So the more we can kind of find those type of pulls is it's giving us more of the right direction, and our body remembers that. So if we can give ourselves as much of those positive connectors to when we were successful, when we were doing things right, um, the best thing I can advise is get the negative side out of it. Hold yourself accountable on a nightly basis, and ask yourself, hey, where do you want to get in the next 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years? And what did you do today? At the end of the night, before you go to sleep, journal to yourself. This doesn't have to be talking to anyone, just talking to you, yourself, your voice notes or your journal. Did I get better today? Am I closer to that person I want to be in 5 years today, or did I get further away? And it's not a time to feel sad or cry. You can if you want, but it's just one of those, it's an honest assessment of holding yourself accountable of what are we going through? What are we doing? And that's something I really instill on the artist and everyone I work with on that side of can we really get on a plan? Because you were
Mhm.
successful at one point in your life. At some point, I think every one of us has found it. And if we can kind of rewire a lot of those things to remember, or at least kind of convince us that it was like, oh, this is kind of like this. And it just kind of gives you that ramp way, and that even though it's something new, it gives you that feeling of something familiar as you're doing something new. And you're able to really merge the two together. It takes some time, but as you get used to it, I always say it's like going to the gym. If you've never worked out before, you can't go into the gym and expect to bench press 500 pounds. It's just not going to happen if you've never worked out or lifted anything before. So, in a lot of cases, most of us have never done any of this like mental work of neuroplasticity, testing ourselves, like stretching our brain, trying to do these things to really help us become a better surviving person within the world. And as we don't know it, we get frustrated when it's not easy. And it's because we've never done it before. It's truly like working out, and it's like working out a muscle. So it's something like I do a lot of meditation to get into that like flow state. And I tell people I was someone with my ADHD. I couldn't get 30 seconds into a meditation without being interrupted or having thoughts going all over, thinking I had to get up and do something. And I was able to honestly assess there that my brain wasn't running the show. My body was running the show. And my body was telling my brain what to do. And in the way our brains work, our brain can tell our body what's to do. That it's just the science of it, of what we can do on a very simple level. You tell your brain to do something, it's going to find it. If you say, I want to see a lot of red cars today, and you start looking out, you're going to see a lot of red cars. So it's just one of those, it's our reticulator activating system within our brain, our RAS. And our brain is like a filter. It's going to give you what you want to see or what you're thinking. And what I was thinking for a long time was very negative, down thoughts on how everything could go wrong. And my life led into things where a lot of things went wrong. And I'm not saying I'm the only cause of that. I know things happen outside of my power, but I also feel like to some extent I've manifested that because, man, I was manifesting a lot of stress and anxiety constantly on an everyday basis, and I was unaware of it.
Mm, exactly, exactly. So, like, do you think that the creativity is a hidden form of therapy that men aren't tapping into enough?
Yeah, I think it's something everyone should because it's when you go to therapy, I don't know, have you been to therapy before?
No.
Okay. So, I'm not saying that it's necessary or needed, but having someone, if you can have a deep conversation with someone, and I think you're doing that a lot on the podcast. So, when you can connect with someone, it's obviously not exactly the same as therapy, but it's the our idea of talking stuff out. Society has become so much of we're looking at our phones, we have our earbuds in, and we don't really kind of talk or look at anyone else outside of whatever's in our circle. So it's really trying to find those, what can we do to be more alert, be more active? It's our phones are all cheap dopamine, Netflix, binging a show, doing all these things. It's cheap dopamine, and it's like, trust me, we all do it. There's always things in the world that, I mean, I'm from America. We know soda is bad for us, and we all drink it anyway. It's just literally one of those things that happens, and I think social media and, the use of phones and binging shows is kinda on that same level of there's
Yeah.
not really much coming good out of a lot of those things, and if anything, especially with your phone, most people work from their phone. If you open up your phone, you're just gonna open up a lot of stress, and, I've seen the turn of what I've been able to do. I used to always first thing I did when I would wake up, I slept on the same side of the bed. I would wake up, look at my alarm clock, and immediately open up my phone and look at my texts and my emails. And I've learned with neuroscience of that was one of the worst things I could do because the first 10 minutes when you wake up, as well as the last 10 minutes before you go to sleep, your brain is in partial theta mode. And usually it's only in theta when you're sleeping. So it's why dreams are very susceptible to us. Is that when you have a dream and your brain is in theta, literally your subconscious is very, very it can be informed very well, like when you're in that mode, and it's like essentially you could talk to it a little clearer and have a quicker connection. So essentially, it's just like I always say, it's like a Wi-Fi router with a quicker connection that you can do. It's not, you want to get this goal done, and how can you get it done faster? This is the shortcut of how it can help you. So in those last 10 minutes, first 10 minutes, when you're in a partial theta mode, if you are opening up your phone to all your problems, all your stresses of everything that's going on, you're going to be in a lot of stress all the time because you're almost priming your brain of this is what the day's going to be like. That's how you're starting it. And I've learned the fine art of keeping my phone away the first 10 minutes, do your shower, brush your teeth, go through your whatever activities to get going for the day, and then look at your phone later. You don't need to see it in those first 10 minutes, and especially those last 10 minutes. And it's crazy if you can replace that of that time that you would look at your phone and opening up the doors of potential stress or probably stress consistently. Start saying to like give your affirmations. Like I said, your subconscious is very really impressionable in that moment. That was the word I was looking for before I couldn't place it. So yeah, your subconscious is very impressionable in those moments. Use it, take it to your advantage. So I say, today's going to be a great day. I'm going to have so much energy today. And most people don't like waking up for work. I started doing the brain trick in those last 10 minutes before I go to sleep. When my alarm goes off, I'm going to have so much energy, whether I got 4 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep, or 8 hours of sleep. It's just, I'm gonna have energy, and essentially, it's the whole, like, red car, theory I mentioned before with your RAS, is if you put your brain into that mode of, "This is how the day is gonna be," you're more likely to experience that type of day. If you say the day is gonna be miserable, "I'm so tired, this is gonna suck today, this is gonna be terrible," that's what your day's probably gonna be like. Your brain is looking for that at that point. So, it's just one of those things of the more you kinda can get into that mode, and for me, it's become a game, I'm competitive. I wanna do it more because 'cause I've seen the positive changes that have happened in my life by just doing some of these small changes on a daily basis, and now I, like, expand them and I do them for longer because 'cause I'm like, "Man, if that had that impact, what else can I do?" So it becomes really fun as you get into it because you feel a better version of yourself, you feel lighter, you feel happier, you're ready to kind of jump into what you wanna do. I'm someone who I used to always have that pit in my stomach, felt anxiety where I felt like someone was like twisting my stomach before I would go to on a Sunday night before I'd have to go to work on Monday for the work week. And I would get so stressed, and I just thought that that's how I was built and that's how I was. And it was anxiety. My weekends would go so lightning fast because I was all like from when I would get out of work at Friday afternoon, I was already stressed about what was going to happen on Monday morning. I couldn't even enjoy that Friday through Sunday. When you go through a lot of these things, like funny things start happening to really cool extents. Is I've had this is a holiday weekend in the United States right now, so it's a 3 day weekend, and so one day more than usual of what we're used to. I feel like I've been off for like 2 weeks, and it's crazy the time of when me being able to go through these exercises, lower my cortisol, and not have that constant stress flowing through my system. A lot of us have grown up in very just stressful households. We think it's normal because we see it every day, but if you can analyze it from the outside, is man, if you have parents who guilt you all the time, and that's how you're getting to doing essentially is they say, "Do you wanna do this?" And you say, "No," and they're like, "Come on, I wanted you to do this. I only see you so," like, that it's that type of thing, and I grew up with that a ton, and I just thought that that was normal. But it's a way of, sometimes people don't even know that they're doing it or that it is a guilt trip, on that end, but as you start realizing that, you'll see that that's very prevalent with a lot of people, and I think they just got used to, like I did, thinking, "This is just what it is. This is normal." And, as I went through, granted, my mom was the greatest, but there was so much stress and anxiety around the situation my dad caused. How could she do anything but? She helped raise 3 kids who didn't know that they were in as much financial trouble as we were. We had no clue. And my mom was able to successfully keep that for us, but I look back at that and, she died of cancer when I was 29, and part of me can't really, like, doesn't wanna go into that, but it makes me think of, man, did she take on so much through those struggles that that got her that quickly. And I know that stress causes disease. There's not always a direct link with cancer. I'm not saying that that is one to the other, but there was no family history for us with cancer. And the doctor said very plainly, either she drank a lot of diet soda and it was maybe one of those sweeteners, and they weren't even sure about that. It was just a running theory. Could be that. But they said most likely it was stress. And I realized, and that was my wake up call of I need to stop living in this stressful mode. I've had people tell me in sessions over the last couple of years that That's just how I operate. And that's how my family is. So that's how I am. And we all have heart attacks in our family. Like the chest problems, it runs in our family. And I'm like, no, heart attacks don't, or they're not genetic. Like that doesn't work like that. And that it's a stress response. So like 90+% of the time. So when you talk about majorities or percentages like that, I'm like, how do we fix that problem? We've noticed everyone's quick to point fingers, but I started looking at how can we lower our personal stress issues of what we're dealing with, and how can we lower that cortisol on a daily basis. And again, you're gonna have bad days, so you feel like you go right back to where you were prior. But I promise, if you keep making the progress on a forward basis, it's very much like a 2, 3 step forward, and then you'll have 1 step back. And it's going to, but if you look at the sum and the net profit of all that, you still took 2 steps forward. So it's the whole mindset of keep taking a step forward, and you're gonna have bad days, but you're gonna have way more good days than you will have bad days.
Very well said, definitely. And I mean, if you had to describe like what healthy masculinity looks like in one sentence today, so then what would you say?
Knowing yourself and how to react when you're at your worst around the people you love.
Hmm. Okay, that's lovely. I mean, so how can men challenge outdated masculine ideals, like without feeling they are losing their identity?
Yeah, it's I would say that you've got to be yourself to some extent, and some will be like much more conservative or liberal, like depending on what your basis or your value system is.
Mm.
But it's being the best version of yourself, being the most authentic person, not doing anything because other people think you should. So that's when you can do that, you tap into authenticity. And I know it just sounds like a buzzword or a cliche because a lot of people talk about be authentic, be yourself type thing. But I use it because there was this Spain test. It was SPANE. It took place in Switzerland. I think it was 2, 3 years ago, and they were gauging different emotions and how much essentially power each emotion kind of emitted from people. So a lot of like seven chakras type stuff is essentially what they kind of went through and what you were looking at. But what they went through is they could find essentially it was as precise or so precise that it could find the difference between anger and frustration. So it could tell those two and show one's on a different level than the other. So with that, a lot of people assume that love was the strongest emotion. That's what we kind of always been taught throughout society, especially Western society, is that love rules all, love conquers all, and it's like those kind of statements that are always attached with love. And love is very high, but it's actually the second highest emotion. Authenticity is the highest. And the theory or the mindset behind that, at least the way I see it, is we can't really, no one can really love you until you love yourself. And to be truly masculine, there's no problem being a masculine guy who does majority of jobs that men typically do. That's 100%. But are you being authentic about it? Is that really you? Or are you being like that because friends of yours act like that? And that's where it comes off that it's like, yeah, like some people are that's just kind of how they're wired. And you'll find partners who like that in a person. But man, there's always partners who like exactly what your qualities are. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. And where that happens, and Jim Carrey, the American actor, was very famous for like Ace Ventura and all that. He went through and talked about depression years ago, and he suffered from severe depression, and talked about that depression is essentially, in his opinion, that it's the feeling you get when you're too tired to make any effort to keep living the life you're living. You get tired of the mask you're wearing because you're not really being yourself. And if you can find those things, and for me, I had to kind of start again. I went through a divorce, lost both my parents, lost a couple grandparents, and I was just in a really low kind of mindset. And that's when I started meditating. It was just kind of I didn't know what else to do. I started meditating, getting back into music, and finding the things that made me me and what I love to do. So I tell people, what do you love to do in your free time? If like literally you have no questions asked, nobody to answer to, whether it's your wife, your parents, whoever, your roommates, whatever, you have no one to answer to. You can do anything. What do you want to do? And that typically is the lead, or at least the pointing in the right direction of where you should go to be fully authentic, because that you get that feeling of relief. For me, it's when I play music, I get such a therapeutic, like it just feels great. And I know other people get that from working out. Some people do it from hiking. It's a mix. Some do it by just painting. So we all have kind of our own thing. It's finding what are we kind of. It doesn't mean it even matter if you're good at it. What do you like to do in your spare time? It doesn't have to be that you're great at it. It could just be, yeah. What do you like to do? What do you like to do to pass time when something kind of not so great happens? And let you get back to be calm. It's something that you love to do. So that's along a side, and it's kind of answering a second part of what you had asked earlier. How I do help some of these artists. It's we find and just dig in of like what did you like to do? What made you happy at any point in your life? And then we try to find as many of those happy moments as possible, put them together, and try to apply that to what they're living now. Of how can they find that same happiness in a simple form of what they're doing now.
Exactly. Yeah. And and I would say that's such a bold vision, and it really shows that masculinity doesn't have to shrink us, but it can expand us into the fuller human being. So definitely. So
Absolutely.
and also like for the man who is listening or who feels lost, trapped between expectations and his own desires, then where should he start, like, in rediscovering purpose?
Sure. Yeah, so when you get into one of those ruts, it's we start with the finding what we just talked about, finding something that is helpful and or therapeutic that you like to do that is a kind of like a stress buster. I give them the concept of the perfect day. Lewis Hose talks about it in one of his books. I don't know if he came up with it, but he's the first one I remember it from, and it's called the perfect day, and it's to actively build towards something. We tend to as humans of if we see progress and we see things moving along, we tend to really get on board and like get behind it. So to create that momentum, I asked them if you had a day to yourself and you didn't have to answer to anybody, what would you do for an entire day? Fill out the 24 hours, including sleep, of what you would do. And we kind of get through all that, and then we start building towards that of like an hour a month. Let's get little closer to your perfect day. Or if you want to do that perfect day within a year, 2 hours a month, and knock that out. And really like just dig in of how do I want to live a day to be the least stressed version of me that I can be. And if you can really dig in on those things and take it seriously, it's amazing of what opens up because so many times we have problems, and it's why it says talk out your problems. It is a common thing. Um, Talking out or breathing, it's finding a way to recenter, recalibrate, and be calm in your decision making. So yeah, it really just always finding that calm, being able to know how can I stay here, and using that calm to find what makes you happy and what brings you happiness.
True. Exactly. And do you think that the purpose has to be a grand, or can it be found in small or consistent acts that shape our mental health daily?
Yeah, I mean, it could absolutely be in small acts. The first thing I say when a client called yesterday that he was really struggling, and I literally just told them, make your bed, start with that. And it's just seeing something get completed. It's your brain you're putting your brain into that mindset to start the day of, I started and finished something. So at the very moment, like many times people say, I did nothing all day. At least I could tell them, I was like, all right, if you get up and make your bed, you started and accomplished something to start your day off. And it usually gets like, okay, it's one of those where a day could feel overwhelming when you get that first thing right off the list, as easy as it can be. It just kind of gives you that forward momentum of, oh, this is going to be a good day. This is going to be easy. And it gives you something that's totally in your control, you can take care of. And it helps kind of reaffirm that positive mindset that we're trying to attain to that we were talking about in those first 10 minutes when you wake up of getting into that like how do I want this day to go, and then you do physically get up, you make your bed, and it's all right, I'm already on the path, I've already done something. And it's what I've started doing when I get scattered, if of my ADHD, I kind of can get a whole lot of different thoughts going at once, and I just kind of feel stuck and frozen and I can't really focus. And I've really jumped into find something to do, vacuum, clean the floors, do like whatever the task is. Like I try to find something that's 5 to 10 minutes, but it's me actually doing something that's productive. And it just it's like anything. Any of those feelings we get, they're contagious. If like you're really happy, other people want to be happy around you. If you're really miserable, other people will be miserable around you. And it works the way we think too. Is if you think positively, I'm big on frequency. Is you attract other people at a like frequency when you're thinking at a high level. If you're thinking at a lower level, you're also going to attract lower level people. So it's always that fine game of what you're putting out there and what you're attracting back. And if just being positive or finding consistent positive things to do daily can make someone's life better, I just viewed that as okay. In a lot of these cases, especially clients I was working with, things couldn't get much worse. They were as bad as depressed as you can get. So it's one of two ways: as is it going to get worse and just go to psychiatrist throughout the rest of their lives, or do they want to actually make some type of positive actions to see if they can make the change? And I'm all for if someone needs medication, you need medication. But in a lot of cases, people have just basic anxieties and stress that's being medicated and probably shouldn't be. It's something that we can work out on our own. It's just, especially the Western society. I can't put that on India because I've never been there and I don't know if that's the exact same. But I know in America, it's very common of, oh, you have anxiety, go get this type of pill to help, like a Xanax or whatever the case is. And I always looked at that, I'm like, "Oh, like, yeah, I get that it helps the symptom, but for me, it was a Band-Aid on something, especially if it's mental health. You're putting on a Band-Aid something that is a gash or a big wound, and a Band-Aid's not like yeah, it may help do the minimum for right now, but it's not gonna do what you need long term. So it's really being able to acknowledge what is the bigger things, what are the smaller things, and literally try to take things one at a time. If you're overwhelmed or stressed, just find one simple thing you can do just to be done with it. And you can say, all right, I progressed and did this thing at least. And it usually gets your brain back in motion, back on the tracks to do what you want to do.
Mm, exactly. Exactly. Wow. Amazing. David, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart today. And uh, I would say that you have shown us that mindset is not just a buzzword, but it's a lifeline. So,
Yeah.
uh, and to all the listeners, like I want you to take a moment after this episode, like ask yourself what belief, what story, what voice in your head is holding you back, and then just ask, like, what new angle could you take to rewrite it, right? Because change doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen the moment we decide to see things differently. So, the listeners, if today's conversation inspired you, connect with David and dive deeper into his work at Another Angle Consulting. So, and also remember that masculinity is not just about perfection, but it's all about courage, compassion, and the mindset to grow. So, David, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Thank you so much. Yeah, Instagram is the best way to reach out to me, David McKee 84 or another Angle Consulting right on Instagram. Yeah, always feel reach out, DM, and we always can love to get the conversation started.
Amazing. Great. So, dear listeners, what I'll do, I'll put all the links into the show notes for a easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, this is your host, Avik, reminding you to keep your mind strong, your heart open, and your masculinity redefined. So, thank you so much.